Can you briefly introduce yourself? What are the highlights of your life so far?
My name is Kasturi Sha and I'm from the Thiruvananthapuram district of Kerala. I am from a family of teachers. Both my parents are teachers. I did my schooling from Saraswati Vidyalaya Vattiurkavu and I passed out as the national topper as well as the state topper in the humanities stream. After that, I did my graduation in BA English Language and Literature from Aravinis College here at Trivandrum. And I was also the first rank of BA English. My hobbies include writing. I've published 3 books so far. I'm into public speaking and debating. I also do YouTube content creation, sir.
YouTube content is on what area?
Based on English literature especially, where I introduce authors and their major works, sir.
Would you start to?
So do you manage to make any money from your YouTube activities?
No, sir, I've not so far monetized it.
How many followers you have?
I have around 80 to 90 followers as of now, sir.
So since you have done English literature,
Yes, sir.
who is your favorite poet?
Favorite poet? I have quite a few of my favorite poets. It's not one particular favorite poet as such. To mention from women's writing, I like the poems of Sylvia Plath. And to speak of the English romantic poets, I love the poems of Coleridge and Wordsworth and also Keats. So I have a bit of diverse interests in poetry, sir.
Are you able to recite, say, something from Keats?
Sorry,
Few
sir.
lines?
I do not know it by heart.
Okay. You write poetry yourself?
Yes, sir.
In English?
Yes, sir, in English.
Okay. Why is it that the United Nations has not been able to act in the context of recent war in Middle East, for instance? What have they done, and do you think they could do more?
So regarding the Israel-Palestine war that's currently going on in the Middle East, the UN has called for a ceasefire. It has brought up resolutions in the General Assembly in which the members have supported it while others have sometimes stayed away from voting on it. And as we have always seen, the United Nations is capable of doing really potential things. But at times, we often find that things are not as optimistic like we believe, or even though we have a lot of talks going on in UN, we have diplomats and their activities are going on at a powerful pace, but UN has got lots to do again. It has got the potential to intervene at a powerful pace.
These resolutions of the General Assembly are not binding. And if anything substantive has to happen relating to such a crisis, the Security Council should be able to act. Why is it that the Security Council cannot agree on a common agenda for addressing such issues?
Yes, sir. The Security Council functioning is not 100% democratic, we should agree, because of the veto power that is held by the 5 permanent members. So there might be vested interests that might be involved when it comes to the permanent members. For instance, we know that the US is on the side of Israel. It even was supplying Israel with greater arms and weapons just the previous day. So with such hold that the P5 has over the Security Council, it is high time that we think of a reform of the Security Council, sir.
How would you assess India's relationship with our immediate neighbors? Is it a comfortable situation for us in terms of having good relations with our neighbors?
So, in general, India is seen as the leader of the global south, and in that sense, we do have cordial relations with our neighbors, but everything is not as rosy because we do know that we have border issues with Pakistan on one hand, with China on the other hand, and on many issues we do not agree with the Chinese policies as well. But if we look at the relation that we keep with Bangladesh as well as with Nepal, Bhutan, even with Sri Lanka, we have good reasons where India has been able to maintain a good regional policy.
We have problems with Pakistan, not easy to resolve. We have big differences with China. Nepal, at least in recent times, has not been as friendly as we would like them to be. Bangladesh, well, it blows hot and cold. Sri Lanka, till their recent financial crisis, had a very difficult relationship with India. Maldives is perhaps not on talking terms with us. So besides Bhutan, where do we have good relations in our neighborhood? Is that a failure of our foreign policy, or is it a problem that we are a big country, which apart from China, our neighbors are all smaller states with insecurities which we have not been able to manage or give assurances. So, is there something wrong in what we are doing towards our neighbors?
As Sir just pointed out, India is a big country and each of our neighbors will have their own insecurities. And they might have the issue of accepting India's role. They might view it with a bit of suspicion, might see India as trying to involve in their affairs. They'll have their own fears, of course. So it is not a matter of the failure of our foreign policy as such, but the issue lies in the contemporary scenario that we have, including the domestic politics that each of the countries might be having.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, we are starting off on a very auspicious note. A very happy new year to you.
Thank
Kasturi.
you, sir. I'm also happy that I could meet all of you dignitaries this blessed day, sir.
Kasturi, the
Yes,
name,
sir.
what is significant about that name in your estimate?
Kasturi, it is significant because it is a substance that is produced by the musk deer and it is known for its prolonged fragrance. It's also known for its medicinal properties, and the substance that is produced, it also has got an ecological significance. So as we live in an ecologically conscious world, I think the name has got to do with our nature, sir.
Do you reckon issues like climate change, challenges that we confront, the ongoing narrative, there is something that we get to hear frequently about climate capitalism. Does it make a sense to you? What is your take on this? Should we save climate from the climate capitalists?
Sir, I'm not aware of the idea of climate capitalism. I haven't read about it so
Okay.
far.
Just go, I mean, in this development versus preservation of the ecosystem narrative, which side are you on? One side, you'll have to use up your fossil fuels, you'll have to have an optimum mix of both emerging clean fuel technologies as well as traditional fossil fuels. What kind of an approach would you recommend? You would have read about COP27
Yes, sir.
and beyond, right from the Paris Climate Accord and the ongoing narrative. What stand would you take?
I would take a stand where nature is not compromised when the path of development is chosen, sir. Because without a sustainable foundation, even development cannot run for a long time. We'll be endangering the existence of humanity.
Do you think we'll be in a position, the world globe will be in a position to meet all these targets, net emissions reduction? We are racing towards that goal, 2070, 2040, 2070, all those milestones, are they realistic?
So they will be realistic only if there is a concerted action that comes from all the countries together, but each country will have their own selfish interest. Everybody is concerned in a GDP driven world to drive their GDP the highest, to have the highest projections in the economy. So until we come out of that kind of a thinking, it will be difficult. It's putting the nations in a tight spot, but we need to come together. There is no choice. We do not have a planet B as we often hear. So.
Okay, back in your homestead, in your state,
Yes, sir.
What in your reckoning, what are the major social issues, contemporary social issues that Kerala faces? Problems.
So Kerala, as we know, stands at a very top notch when it comes to the Human Development Index. It is at par with the European countries often. But at the same time, the state of Kerala is also a mire of paradoxes, where we find that both extremes exist together in the state of Kerala. We have the well-educated, the outgoing, the very liberal-minded sections. At the same time, we have the prevalence of conservatism. We do have patriarchal attitudes that still prevails. For instance, it was just weeks before we saw the death
Can
of...
you briefly list out a few glaring social problems that we confront today?
Yes, sir. The first thing is, of course, the dowry element that still prevails. That's regarding the problem that women faces and the kind of attitude that we often keep towards women. Secondly, even though Kerala is a state with a transgender policy, the attitude that most of the Keralites bear towards sexual minorities is not so fair. And thirdly, regarding the quality of higher education.
What is unconscious bias?
The bias that comes up due to socialization, but people might not be very conscious of it. It happens. We might not even be aware that we are thinking in a biased manner. So.
Do you see that we are taking a course towards gender neutrality, going beyond gender equity concepts? Is it really happening?
So the policy of gender sensitization, bringing up a viewpoint of gender neutrality, even though all this is happening, but we're still not on an exact path of gender neutrality. As Sir just mentioned, we do have this unconscious bias permeating through our thought processes. So it'll take a bit of time so that the new generation gets molded along such thought lines.
Have you heard of Brahmapuram problem? Brahmapuram?
Yes, sir.
Is it?
It was
Supposing, hypothetically, if you were in charge of that situation, what will you do for as part of a disaster mitigation plan?
The recent incident where the landfill fires took place in Kochi in Brahmapuram, the problem was with the municipal waste management, of course. So first solution was to have waste treatment plans, for which we should have begun at the segregation level. So proper waste segregation could have been a solution. So we'll have proper mechanisms in place, like we have the Harita Karma Sena here in Kerala. So similar mechanisms where waste can be collected, properly segregated, and first of all, ensure that they don't end up in the landfills. And if at all they end up in landfills, we should have taken up steps like a bioremediation, where new technologies could have been introduced. Yes, sir. So for new technologies, we'll have to bring up partnerships with firms, with NGOs. It's something.
Heard of stubble burning? NCR
yes.
region?
Yes, sir.
What will be your prescription for?
Again, sir, for stubble burning, we need technologies there. For instance, the technologies like torrefaction, where the stubble can be converted into pellets. So the solution lies in introducing technology, but at the same time in convincing the farmers, in sensitizing them, in taking them into confidence as well, sir.
Can generative AI create poems that are better than those of Keats and Coleridge?
I was talking to a friend who told me that generative AI can write better poems than any poet. She even said that last Valentine's Day, generative AI had written 5 love poems for her. So it is true that generative AI has that creative capability, and we might even have to confront a world where the creativity of AI would coexist with the creativity of human beings. So let's accept creativity as it is, without that is what I personally feel, without showing a distinction between human creativity and AI creativity. I think, sir, both would coexist in a coming world.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Kasturi, how are you?
Fine, sir.
Yeah. Are you comfortable in that chair?
Yes, sir. I'm
Okay.
very comfortable.
Okay. But I feel slightly stressed on seeing you sit very straight and looking very stressed, and
No,
you are
sir,
not
I'm not
stressed.
stressed.
Okay. Let me ask a complimentary question. Seetharam sir asked a very important question. Do you think the United Nations, United Nations is a body consisting of several nations, and they have to serve the interests of the nations and all that. That's a fundamental premise on which the whole body works. But my question is, do you think globalization has brought in a different set of priorities? Like, for example, India is looked at as a huge market. In fact, all countries are looked upon as either markets or they have got some other interests. So you talked about having leaden feet about several vital international issues. But earlier, these vital issues were based on their ideology or politics alone. But now there are other interests, subsidiary interests, especially commerce. Would you say that this has contributed to the lack of teeth in UN?
So, I do not know if I get the question right.
I can simplify it.
Yes, sir.
I can ask you, has globalization contributed to the softening of the functioning of UN?
Oh, yes, sir. I'd like to say that UN has aided the process of globalization to a very big extent. At the same time, the economic forces of globalization have had an influence on the working of UN as well. For instance, regarding the economic policies of most of the countries following the era of liberalization, that has seen a time where the sovereignty of the governments has shrunk, and rather the power of corporations have increased. So the influence as well as the lobbying power that the corporates will have over the UN will obviously be higher, sir.
Be on the rise.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in India, there is a theory, not a theory, a recent popular book by Yuval Noah Harari says that, we have to have stories all the time. We go by stories. Now, currently, 2 stories are very popular in India. One story is that there is a government that is leading the country towards one polarized region. And there is another story which says that, it is a very dangerous trend and we have to fight this kind of what they call as majoritarianism. Now, as a debater yourself, how do you present your points? 2 points in favor of the first story and 2 points in favor of or against the second story.
So the first story says that India is a majoritarian country.
Hmm.
And the second story says that
The second story is about
opposite.
the opposite, yeah.
That India is an all-welcoming land
Ah.
where plurality is accepted.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So,
Sir,
personally speaking, where would you cast your vote?
I would be debating in favor of the view that says India is a plural nation and where it believes in the idea of Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, where all cultures come in and melt into this salad bowl of India. So, I'll be putting my views forth in that favor, sir.
Okay. Now, shall I ask you one or two questions on literature?
Yes, sir, sure.
You must have studied a very important poem by Keats called Ode on a Grecian Urn. Okay. Now, what is that poem about? Where he ends the poem with a very important statement like beauty is truth and truth beauty, and that is all that you need to know. Now, what is the poem about?
So, from what I recollect now, the poem speaks about the immortal power of artwork, that it can outlive man and can last for a longer period of time.
Very good. What are the examples of, what are the concrete examples that Keats give to prove this concept of immortality?
Sorry, sir, I am not able
He
to.
describes an urn, the pictures in the
Grecian.
urn. Now, can you give me one or two pictures that are depicted on the surface of the urn?
So, there is a man and a woman, but I do not know the description exactly.
There is a man and a woman, and the man wants to kiss the woman, but the man doesn't kiss the woman, and that is the immortality. You know, once you kiss, then that takes away the essence of the sweetness of it. So art gives you this kind of a perennial, waiting, a sense of waiting. So that is the important message.
Yes, sir.
So you should be able to, as the chairman was asking, you should be able to recite from some of these poems.
Sure, sir.
And also you should know what are the important lessons that these poems carry
Yes, sir.
to the common reader. Now you yourself are a writer, and what are the prospects of a writer in the coming years or in the years to come? Say, for example, especially in the age of ChatGPT and AI and other things. What is the fate or what is the market or prospect for writers?
Yes, sir. As we recently spoke about the influence of AI on creating, on creative writing, the power of AI to churn up poems. Despite that, sir, I believe a writer would still be as empathetic as a writer was. So the element of empathy in a ever globalizing world, in a world that is running after riches and glory. So in such a world, we need good writers to feel the pulse of humanity, to understand them, to work with the common man, and to protect the diversity, the challenges that diversity is facing in the modern world today. So the writer continues to be relevant, sir.
Would continue to be relevant.
Yes, sir.
So can you name one or two of your favorite writers who are writing right now, both in English and in Malayalam?
Yes, sir. I'd like to begin with my mother tongue in Malayalam. I love the writings of Sarah Joseph, who is one of the prominent Malayalam novelist, short story writers. And from English, I'd like to highlight Jayashree Mishra, who is an Indian English author, as well as Jhumpa Lahiri, sir.
You earlier mentioned, or in your DAF, you have mentioned that you were you could sit along with the Prime Minister to watch the Republic Day parade,
Yes.
which I think is a fantastic achievement, and I should congratulate you on that.
Thank you, sir.
There is actually a novel by Sarah Joseph in which a girl had to undergo a lot of torture because of a political event. Which was that novel? By Sarah Joseph. That novel was translated into English as well.
The other book?
Don't remember.
No, sir.
The novel is called Budhini.
Okay, sir.
Okay, in
Yes,
which a tribal girl garlands Nehru, and that created a lot of political
Yes.
turmoil in the state as well as outside.
Yes.
Okay.
That, sir, was that the incident where she was thrown out from her community?
Yeah, so many. Yeah. There was a series of incidents
yes,
happened after
okay.
that. Okay, now you attempted civil service only once, and you are now in the hot seat. Okay, now if you were asked to give one piece of advice to aspirants, what would that be?
So I would tell them not to see the examination as the only thing in life. This is just a part of life, and there is more to life.
How could you be as philosophical as this in this age?
No, sir, because I've had many of my friends worrying, fretting, what will I do if I don't clear this? What I don't have any option, especially girls telling me that my parents are going to marry me off once I'm 25. So the only thing I tell them is that to not worry, because life is not the examination alone. This is after all only an examination, and life has more than that, sir.
Okay, fantastic.
Today's newspaper had an important announcement about an appointment by Government of India. Have you noticed that?
No, sir, I did not get the time to read the paper. I just went through the front page of it.
Okay. What is the most important news on the front page today?
One news which said that US had fired upon three Houthi militant attacks that came and in the Red Sea. And another news was regarding the MGNREGA, which said that.
And the news on India, most important news. ISRO.
It had launched a satellite, the VSAT, which was created, the first women-made satellite.
What is that satellite intended for?
Sorry, sir, I am not aware of the specifics.
Okay, leave it. Recently, there was this news about the Parliament passing a act regarding appointment of election commissioners and all. Do you have any idea about why the law had to be enacted and what is the important aspect of that law?
Sir, I've heard about the news, but I'm not particularly aware of the nuances of it. I need to do a deeper reading about it, sir.
No, there's only one particular, the whole law was passed only on one particular issue. Okay, let's leave. Regarding the other laws which was passed, amending the CRPC, IPC and all, you have any idea about what are the aspects of that amendments?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain something, why it was brought in and what are the major changes that is intended?
The IPC, it was a colonial legislation, so it was really high time that we have a reformation of that colonial legislation, and the government has come up with the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita and the Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita, and the Indian Evidence Act has been replaced with the Sakshya Bill as well. So in that regard, even though we have the Indian versions of the names for these bills, which was one of the biggest criticisms which were leveled against it, but despite that, it has also incorporated much more deeper changes. For instance, the charge of terrorism has been much more clearly laid out in the new bill, as well as regarding the crimes against women as well, sir. It has been, it is much more pro-women and much more clearer in that regard. Apart from that, yes, sir, that is what I remember.
It tries to address one of the major problems of judiciary system in India, which the public has to face. What is that issue which it is trying to address? Does it have any provisions regarding delay in disposal of cases and all?
So I'm not aware about the
Okay.
details of it.
Okay. Actually, we were referring to the fight going on, the Israel-Hamas war. Which side has your support?
So I think each side will have its own merits and
Yeah,
its own.
and if you are asked to judge, okay, you have which side you want to support and why? I mean, after all, yes, every side will try to justify from their point of view. In a given situation, you have to, I mean, you are not neither the UN nor an international power, but you can have your own opinion. Your opinion, which side is more justified in their stand?
So going by the lines of the two-state solution that UN and even India has stood for, in that sense, I do believe that Palestine has a reasonable state to exist in its own.
No, I meant talking in terms of the current war, because that's a bigger issue. But then, in starting the war, which is almost going on for a long time and taken so many lives, who is on the right and who is on the wrong?
So I'm not exactly able to point out who is right and who is wrong as such, but I do believe that the method that Hamas used initially on Israel of bombing the cities and killing the Israeli civilians, that was not fair, because the method, of course, was violent and that attack should never have happened. And secondly, Israel retaliating with much greater force, and as we've seen, the death tolls have climbed so high. So without such humanitarian considerations, that again is wrong.
So you are saying there is a little bit of justice on both sides, and but if a call comes, no, you have to choose on one person, he is justified, the other person is on the wrong.
No, sir, I cannot justify
Okay.
both of the sides.
Okay, leave it. Now, there is a target being talked around by many people about that India will soon become the third biggest economy in the world. How do you see the scene? How far are we in achieving that target? What are the likelihood of our achieving it?
Yes, sir. It is a very optimistic vision that India would soon become a $5 trillion economy. It would soon be leading in the vanguard. And there are immense possibilities for that, sir, I believe. Because India being one of the youngest nations with the youngest
No, I
average
see slightly
age.
specifically, to become third, how much do we have to grow? How many years is it likely to take in comparison to the target that is being talked about?
The path ahead, of course, it's going to be difficult, because currently we are a $3 trillion economy. So the journey from a $3 trillion to a $5 trillion economy, we'll have to work very ambitiously, which will involve a lot of structural economic changes as well.
Can you name a few structural changes that you would like to see in the Indian economy too, so that would make us to the third spot in the world ranking?
Yes, sir. The first level of change should be in the employment indices of the people.
Employment?
Employment index, where we want more participation from the women. The female labor force participation has to increase. We need to bring in upskilling and
No,
reskilling.
you are identifying the problems.
Yes, sir.
But what would be the you are saying some structural changes are needed.
Yes, sir.
After identifying all the problems, what are the structural changes that, if you are given the power, what would be the structural changes that is needed?
First structural change would be enhancing the manufacturing capability of India, sir. And second one would be enhancing the employability of the people, and the human resource development of the people should come up. For instance, where we find that in South Korea, the vocational educated people are 98%, whereas in India, the skilled population stands at around 4%. So regarding skilling, that will be one of the massive structural changes that we'll have to bring about. Thirdly, regarding the logistics policy of India, where the logistics cost of India, of course, it's coming down than what it used to be, but we need to bring it further down by enhancing the logistics ease, promote shipping. Even maritime sector will be one of the possibilities for India there, provided we work with a blue economy. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all. Our interview part is over, so we'll get into the feedback stage of it. Yeah, very good.
You've done very well.
Thank you, sir.
You communicate with ease. But in terms of substance, I think a little more preparation is required in several areas.
Yes, sir.
Was English literature one of your subjects for the main exam?
No, sir. Optional was sociology.
Sociology.
Yes, sir.
But since you studied English literature, you notice that there are questions. And once you say favorite author and so on, it's expected that you would know about those works in detail.
Yes, sir.
And if you don't know what the Ode to a Grecian Urn is all about, then it gives a slightly negative sense about
Yes, sir.
the subject that you have studied. So I'm not saying you should know that poem, but keep some poem in mind.
Yes, sir. Sure.
And then you mention
As an escape route.
Yeah.
I know this.
Then you mention that author so that the board will ask you about that person and not somebody else.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. But it's important that you prepare yourself in that way. And since you write poetry, you may be asked to recite some lines from your own writing and so on. So you're handling the questions, but there's a certain sense of understanding of issues which you need to
Yes, sir.
prepare with some more depth.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All the very best.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Kasturi, you come across as a very confident candidate, but as Sir put it, probably a few rough edges have to be ironed out before the interview.
Yes,
When
sir.
is your interview scheduled?
The date has not come yet, sir. It's
Your
not in the
dates are-
first
so
phase.
which means you have reasonable
Yes,
time
sir.
ahead of you. Stay prepared. A couple
Yes,
of
sir.
things I just wanted to share with you. See, today the interviews have evolved to an extent where you will find either the interviews take on a flavor of, it acquires a flavor of randomness. Whole lot of questions will be asked, which are not in a fleeting the gap of about 35 to 40 minutes, that window which you get to have a conversation with the board. They ask you random, sometimes it acquires a very random note, sometimes it takes a deep dive into your specialization, literature for instance, or it can go to sociology, or it can be something on a random behavioral event interviewing, as they call it, behavioral event, which means you will be asked to take on a role, a hypothetical role, and your response. And as Sir very rightly, he had to nudge you to take a stand on a burning issue today that we face. You cannot be nudged to take a stand. In such situations, please feel free, confident enough. You may try to sound politically correct and all that, but these are certain uncomfortable questions. The whole idea behind it is to encourage you to take a stand, and you should justify on what
Yes,
score.
sir. Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir asked you pointedly that question a
Yes,
couple of
sir.
times. Yeah. But there, and then again, I would fully endorse what Seetharaman sir. But when you quote, when you are asked to quote Keats, you should not remain stumped, and that way literature.
Yes, sir.
At least some quote should come out, if not
Just two
the quote
lines
what
to-
you.
one
Just
or
two
two
lines.
Oh, yes, sir. Okay.
That you can do anyway,
Yes.
much better than us, obviously, being so current to, and maybe a lot of brushing up on the past, probably romantic poets. You said Coleridge, you talked about Lake District, Wordsworth. See, when you make such statements, be prepared to face questions
Yes, sir.
as a sequel to what you are stating. They catch on to that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So maybe Keats and Ode to Grecian Urn, the frieze that you have where the lover extends to kiss, which never happens. Those things, the mortality of art, which you rightly brought out. The way in which you explain things is pretty good. At the same time, don't, what should I say, stall on the basics. Some facts,
Yes.
something which are facts related or information related. Those things one has got to be wary of.
Yes.
And then maybe issues in law, the issues in constitution, the contentious articles today that which we are trending, please brush up those
Yes, sir.
areas. Maybe map out, cluster a few mapping of questions, likely questions from your personal side, maybe academic side, past professional. Did you have any past professional experience?
No, sir.
It's I mean, too young, of course, but and I'm glad that you've cracked it in the first attempt itself. Kudos.
Thank you, sir.
Not many people do it these days. I find the average age of civil servants today is gone up.
yes.
It
Also-
hit the 25 plus ceiling.
Find time to read the newspaper of
newspaper.
the day of the interview.
Yes, sir.
Yes, exactly. But most importantly, you should come across as a person, who, and never leave any responses open-ended. If you are asked a question on Israel-Hamas war, please speak for or against, and then as another member very rightly observed, see, you should have, you should take the debate to a level where you should be able to speak for and against those points, and then summarize it and conclude. Never leave it open-ended. The response should be closed in issue-based, because you are a debater, I need not tell you.
Yes, sir.
You should be able to see both sides of the picture, coin, and then come to a firm conclusion.
Yes, sir.
And nothing either right or wrong in such.
Yes, sir. Okay.
As you say, war itself is, what should I say, avoidable in the first place. When you start a war, it's very difficult to conclude it, is it?
Yes, sir.
And read up on Shivashankar Menon's choices, or the current EAM, current book on diplomacy in an age of uncertainty,
Yes,
the
sir.
India way. All such contemporary stuff, you can bring it into your argument, some, insights
Yes, sir.
into your arguments that would beef up your answers, make
Yes,
it
sir.
more, a richer content in your response. I mean, these are the few
Yes, sir.
observations. Otherwise, you are good to ace the interview. A par score, I would rate it as 160, 170 in such interviews out of 250, which is just a par score, competitive, but you can't say the outcomes. But in your case, I think you should definitely be looking at something beyond 180, 190,
Yes, sir. Okay.
and you are capable of that.
Sure, sir.
Okay, all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Kasturi, there are four very important points I want to tell you. One is, before you go for an interview, there are four areas that you have to master. One is, imagine you have mentioned a book or an author. You should know something very specific about both the book and the author.
Yes, sir.
So otherwise, don't mention names. It's a dangerous terrain. Number one. Second is that there will always be a few ideas or concepts that are making its rounds at the time of your interview. Like majoritarianism is a term that is currently flaunted by many a journalist. So you should know what is it about, what are they talking about. And that is something you have to prepare yourself on and have a point to say. See, perhaps the interview would be the last chance for you to speak your mind out. Once you become a civil servant, it may not be possible. Okay. Now, you make your position very clear.
Yes, sir.
Because you yourself are a debater. The fact that you're a debater doesn't come out in the interview. You appear to be you want to say something very safely, lest the board should think that you are a fundamentalist or something like that, It is not like that. You can speak your mind. That is how you improve your performance for the interview. Okay. So you are capable of. That's why I am telling you all this. And I have got my favorite formula of local, national, international, personal and professional.
Yes, sir.
LNIP square, that's what I call it. Okay. Be conversant with 5 issues, local issues, 5 national issues, 5 international issues, 5 issues related to your profession. Your profession, right now you are a very bright candidate and you have aced the exam and you are one among 4.5 lakhs, less than 3,000 would have been selected for the interview. And from 4.5 lakhs, you are one among the 3,000, which I think
1 in a million.
1 in a million, as we used to call it. So you have to appear more confident and more relaxed and more outspoken. That's what the board would expect you to do. That's what you have to do. Okay. And about statistics, let me tell you, you can watch YouTube videos, especially videos in which Mohandas Pai of Infosys appears. He has got an obsession with statistics.
Yes, sir.
So you will get immense kind of statistics from, there are podcasts on Mohandas. There is something called The Record or something in which he really gives out a lot of statistics. There is an interview with Narayana Murthy that also you can watch.
Yes, sir.
Then there are speeches by one Sai Deepak,
Sir.
J. Sai Deepak. Recently, there is a very popular YouTube video on Article 370. He makes a highly detailed study of the article. And I think you should watch those videos also, in addition to reading books. You should occasionally visit bookstores, not to buy books, but to know what is in store.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, we will meet more often. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kasturi, the
Any
feedback.
questions which you have to ask the board?
Let me also.
After.
Oh, sorry.
So you have a lot of positives, potential, very good potential. But I think you must give some more emphasis on current affairs, especially whatever is happening between now and your interview date.
Yes,
Like today, Government of India announced the Finance Commission chairman's appointment.
Yes, Arvind Panna.
So you had
I read it, sir, but
I specifically liked appointment by Government of India to a commission, but you couldn't recollect. So what is the Finance Commission's role? It's a very important aspect. So those you should read up.
yes, sir.
Election Commission was another controversial issue, appointment of Election Commission. You couldn't recollect that. So again, about the amendment to the criminal laws, the main aspect was, now one of the major problems the public face with the case is the time it takes, 15, 20 years when it takes for a case to be decided. So that is what it is trying to, many attempts were made in the past, nothing succeeded. This is another attempt to change the laws for speedy justice. So you have to answer the most important point. You knew about everything, but you couldn't bring out the main aspect of the change. And the other thing I would like to, about the decision making. See, civil servants are supposed to take decisions. You take a decision, it may end up to be wrong, it may end up to be right. So when you are asked to take a stand specifically, you have to say, see, when there is a complainant and accused, you can't say both are right. Isn't it? There is a war between two, only one of them have to be right. You may side one thing, somebody may disagree with that, but you have to side that, okay, Israel is right because of these reasons, or Hamas is right. So saying to say both are correct, both should be encouraged that means the war should continue. If you have,
I still remember. So sometimes, the kids are asked to take a
Yes.
stand. Do you love your dad more or more? No. Both are fine. Yeah,
That
and
is-
something similar.
That's the difference between a theoretical answer in a theory paper and an interview. Here, yes, you can justify it, but in a situation where taking a stand is called for, you should not refrain from that. You should not avoid taking a stand. That is worse than taking a wrong stand, I would say. Take a stand and try to justify as much as possible.
Yes.
then economy also, if slightly more material could come into that. If India has to become the third, how much we have to grow, what rate of, because it's being discussed quite often. At the current rate, we cannot do it in the targeted 4 or 5 years and all.
Yes, sir.
So these are issues which may, both current affairs and economy and all, you should be, there's still time, so be very well versed with whatever is happening between now and the interview, with slightly more substance to the answer. Otherwise, your way of answering, handling things are all very good. A little bit more of substance would do a lot of good. Yeah, you say you. Yeah, now your turn to ask us anything if you want.
So my voice was audible.
I was about to say a bit louder. It should be a bit more louder. It's a bit too soft.
Because pace, modulation, everything was.
Everything is okay. A bit louder so that everybody can hear. It is a bit needed.
Yes, sir.
Anything else you want to ask?
Sir, should I keep this? I generally am a soft-spoken person. I do not know to get into that aggressive tone. Even when I debate, this is the...
So when you debate, perhaps you can, if you are comfortable with it, if you 1 or 2 hand gestures to emphasize your points,
Yes, sir.
without being too, overdoing things. If you can do that, non-verbal this thing also helps.
Yes.
Sometimes, when you are facing issue-based questions.
You can sit back completely in the chair, kind of.
That's what I was.
Yes,
That
it was
is an
also
easy
mentioned.
posture.
Otherwise, your overall way of physical appearance, excellent, no problem.
Yes.
Yeah, don't appear to be tense. You may not be tense, but sitting in the front half of the chair would give an impression that you are sort of on the edge.
Yes,
May not be.
One more thing I wanted to tell you, there was a trend in the board last year, just to share the information. There were a couple of members who used to read out your DAF aloud. The chairperson would read out the DAF loud. That creates a sense of,
Nervousness.
sometimes nervous, or maybe some key points. There will be a recency effect. People start asking questions, the members start asking questions based on that recency effect. Sometimes it happens, so be prepared for the DAF analysis in depth.
Yes, sir.
That is my formula's 4th point, personal.
Yes,
Whatever you write in the DAF, you have to be responsible for it.
yes.
Your hobbies, your interests, your qualification, the achievements you have made. So you have to be thinking about it and detailing them whenever necessary.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir.
All the best.
Amrita IAS Academy.